Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Products with Purpose, an interview series that I'm doing on LinkedIn Live and other channels, and that will be turned into a podcast soon. Today, I am happy and excited to be joined by Mick Hase. I will introduce him in 1 second, but just a little bit about what we're doing here. My name is Eli Harrell. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, big advocate of self-directed lifelong learning, and a supporter of purpose-driven businesses. The purpose of this show, Products with Purpose, is to tell the stories of extraordinary people who are putting everything on the line, going all in to create real impact through usually some sort of business model. Building products, people who are building products and businesses that are meant to sustainably change the way we live and the way that we see the role of business on the planet. And if you've ever started anything as an entrepreneur or started anything from scratch, you know that when you go all in like that, failure can be really disheartening. So the purpose of this show is to just tell stories to increase the odds of success for those of you out there building something that matters by telling stories of people in the same kind of game. So for today's conversation, I'm joined by Mick Hase. He's known for being a dad, a surfer, supposedly a mediocre boxer. Who knows? He's also the founder of 17X, which is these are speaking events that tour around Australian cities and that are now hybrid and can be attended globally, which is really cool. These events are focused on educating, engaging, and enabling the business community to take impact action that's in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17, thus the name. He also runs a podcast called 17X that I've had the fun time of being a guest on a couple of times. And Mick, his core purpose that I understand is to connect values-aligned brands and people to make a purposeful impact in the world. Without further ado, I could say more things because I know Mick reasonably well by now, but I will just let Mick tell you a little bit about himself. So Mick, thanks for being here. Welcome. Appreciate you
Eli,
taking
oh man, thank you. Thanks for that intro. It's nice. Yeah, definitely a mediocre boxer. It's just a fitness thing more than anything.
something I've never taken up yet. We'll see one of these days.
Yeah,
So Mick, tell us a little bit about the story of how you got to the point of deciding to build 17X, whatever part of your backstory that seems relevant there that you want people to know about. And yeah, tell us about that and what it's all about.
yeah. Thanks. So 17X was born out of me wanting to do more public speaking. um, I've spent really the last 10 to 12 years where I fell into management consulting / coaching type work, working for myself. I've worked for myself for around 10, maybe about 12 years now. And that's kind of been my day job for a long time, is working with really the small business of the SME sector, the smaller end of town, here on the Gold Coast primarily. And at the time, around late 2018, I was looking at, okay, how can I actually meet people that are values aligned, that interest me, that perhaps we can, add value to one another, but do it in a way that's not that traditional networking, business card swapping, non-personal kind of way that I'm sure we've all been to. So I was kind of just trying to come up with ideas. And I thought, okay, maybe I should just do some more public speaking because I absolutely love jumping on stage. My wife says to me commonly, you should have been a front man of a band or something because you seem to like being on stage. And because I'm not musical, maybe I can just talk. It's a bit of a funny story where I started ringing around some speakers bureaus to look at how I could get on stage at the right type of spaces. And this one lady that I spoke to asked me if I had any film of me speaking, and at the time it was a no. I gave her my resume or my CV of where I've spoken before, but because I didn't have film, I didn't cut the mustard, and she basically slammed the door in my face. And so at the time, I just kind of thought, well, I don't really have time or the patience to have that conversation 100 times until someone takes me on. So instead of trying to get on somebody else's event, maybe I should just start my own. And then thinking, I think I'd just come back from StartCon, which is a massive startup conference that happens in Sydney. And I'd been a bit juiced from being around 1,000 or so people in a room, and this startup space, I think it's put on by freelancer.com, very very startup tech kind of space. I think you'd love it, Eli, if you haven't been there. But so I was very juiced around the whole idea of conferences, and but I was very much thinking, okay, if I'm going to jump on stage and create my own event, it can't be about me. I guess I hate those events where people are just about trying to sell their own stuff or that kind of thing. So at the time, I was learning a lot more about these global goals, and so I thought, okay, well, let's come up with an event that aligns people to these global goals. I love TED, so let's create a TED style speaking event that aligns business and with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then all of a sudden, I had a model and an idea, and went, let's do it. So the first one happened in April 2019 at the shout out to the Gold Coast Innovation Hub for giving me their space to test. I think we had 30 people, 4 great speakers. I emceed it, and by the end of that day, we had some great feedback, and an Australian tour booked within a week of all major cities in 2019. And so here we are.
Congrats. Tell us a little bit. Thanks for sharing that, and tell us a little bit about what is your vision for impact with 17x, and what are some of the achievements or progress that you've made so far?
Yeah, look, I think for me, it's about connecting people. We look at these global goals. There's 17 sustainable development goals, 17 with a huge amount of KPIs and measurements and targets underneath them that are varied across the board for anyone that isn't familiar with them. And commonly when I would speak to, say, my clients or other small business owners, the answer I would get was, I'm just a small business. What can I actually do? These are global problems. How can I actually impact this? I guess one of the common pieces of feedback was very much in alignment with people being a bit misunderstood that they have to try and fix these problems on their own. And one of the great things that we've seen through 17x is this collaboration and collection of ideas, innovation through partnerships, and being able to put people in a room that are values aligned. Progress, innovation, collaboration is very natural in that space. So I think the biggest learning curve or the biggest opportunity that has come out of 17x is the connection of values aligned brands that can actually attempt to solve some of these problems together rather than worrying about trying to do it by themselves. And then secondly is not having to do them at a global scale to start with. You don't have to be Bill Gates eliminating polio at a global level. You can be a couple of small businesses in the back of Byron Bay working on eliminating plastics from your supply chain together and doing it at a community level. And it's just as impactful and it's just as important. So that's probably the two main takeaways so far for 17x. And I'm continually seeing this values aligned connection be one of the strongest opportunities for us moving forward as a business.
That's beautiful. As a lifelong entrepreneur, I've spent decades building businesses without really having a purpose other than my own visions of freedom and etc. And now that I've realized that having a much more clear and meaningful direction to head or caring about the problems that I'm setting out to solve is a way more enjoyable direction in business for me.
Yeah.
But it has often been a question, how can we be more impactful? Like, how can we set up our business so that we feel like we're heading in that direction faster and making a more meaningful impact and being able to see it. So I love this conversation and being able to help small businesses or, anyone building a product. So I think that's why I brought you on this show, is even though your focus isn't building a tech product, for anyone out there who is, how can we be engineering that product to have more impact? And so tell us, for anyone, and obviously for anyone who isn't very familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, like go look them up. It's easy to find, and I think that's really important. That's the point of what you're trying to do, right? Is to get us to pay more attention to these things. But what led you? How did you start down this path of studying them and then being so passionate to make sure other people understand?
Yeah, sure. So I first learned about the SDGs through a company called B1G1. B1G1. At the time, I was working at a business college here on the coast. It was probably the last job I think I've had where I was employed. And at the time, we linked up with B1G1. These guys are a giving platform, and their whole business model is around connecting businesses to transaction-based giving. So aligning your widget to a purpose-driven outcome that is almost in instantaneous alignment to purpose and impact. Now, through their model, they jumped on with the SDGs when they came out in 2015, and just simply by being in their network, that was where I was first exposed to the global goals. For anyone that isn't familiar, effectively 2015 there was the millennial goals. There was 8 or 9 of them prior to 2015, but 2015 the UN global leaders got together and basically said, right, the world's not in a great place. We need to fix it. And they came out of the conversation with these 17 goals. If you want to find them, globalgoals.org. It's all open source. It's all ready to go, and it's all there. So the guys at B1G1 were where I found out about them, and I started to look at, okay, how can I align my activities with my coaching when I started coaching with these global goals? It just for my own real benefit, I guess, is just making me feel good about doing a bit of good whilst I'm running my business. And then I guess to become a bit of a megaphone for the whole thing in recent times. And please remember, I'm not the only one. I'm at the very start of this kind of journey. There are a huge amount of amazing humans in the world and here in Australia that are much further down the track with the global goals and innovation and application than I am. And I just hope that 17x provides a platform for these partnerships to take this on. But one of the main parts was in my early, in the early parts of 17x, say in the first 3 events, we did Gold Coast, Adelaide, Sydney, with some terrific partnerships, and more and more conversations were happening at the time. And I realized that the international space, some European countries, Japan, certainly the States, are much further along than we are here in Australia. And that's where a little light bulb kind of went off in my head and said, okay, Australia needs to wake up and get a little bit further engaged with these global goals. And that's where the penny really dropped for me, that we have an opportunity, I think, for Australian businesses to really take these global goals on board and not only look to how we can contribute to some of these solutions, but how good it is for business. I'm a huge believer in, and the whole 17x model is around putting for-profit business models to the most part on stage that are also creating outcomes. You don't have to be a charity or a NGO or a social enterprise that gives everything away. You can be a for-profit successful business that also creates amazing sustainable outcomes in the world. And thanks to the millennials and the generation behind them and Greta Thunberg and all of her friends, we have no choice. As a business, we have to evolve and innovate and get on board. And I think that's a huge opportunity rather than a challenge. Yeah.
I very much agree with you. And that's one of the things that excites me. A little bit later, I want to come back to that topic of kind of like the trends that we're seeing and what you are positive about based on those things. But first of all, I want to say thank you for introducing me to B1G1, because I think the concept of what they do is fascinating. We've already used them, and I'm now building concept. I specifically B1G1 as a platform for our clients as we build out an accelerator for people building products to be able, so that we can help them plug those systems into what they're building. And so, just you introducing me to B1G1, I hope in the future that that's going to be something that has a lot of impact, because we can distribute those systems to our clients, right? So very exciting stuff.
They just make it easy, right? And I think models like B1G1, even just the global goals on their own, there's the 17, they're kind of broken down at you can view them at a macro level or get really, really micro. But as a small business, tech startups, going, okay, we want to create this product, but we want it to create some meaningful action in the world. the big question mark of, well, where do we put our focus? We can't try and fix everything.
Yeah.
There's 17 focus points right there, and you can literally just pull one out, start that you're aligned with, at least to get the ball rolling, and then become, busier as you go. But these platforms, like a B1G1 or Pledge 1%, all of these movements and communities that make it easier for us, and as we continue into the 21st century, tech is going to make it even easier for us to access these solutions. And hopefully 17X can put some of them on stage to give them a bit of a sounding board to show us how to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's exciting to me to see more opportunities and options. And I like what you just said about choosing one of the 17 goals. For me, I've known for a long time that I'm very passionate about self-directed learning, and so anything that I can do to further or accelerate the way we evolve how humans learn is something I'm passionate about. So just starting kind of there and knowing I want to serve ed tech companies as much as I can. I would love to work with people that are innovating in tech or ed tech. So it does really, just that simple choice to pick something for yourself that you're passionate about and focus on it can be really useful.
And being okay with being different. Just to touch on that point is, so climate action right now is obviously a very hot topic. We've got COP26 on the way next week, I believe. And plastic, getting rid of plastic is a very hot topic. But if you've got a particular affinity with something to do with the oceans, that's okay. You don't have to align yourself with whatever's the most noisiest problem that the world is facing right now. I had a great conversation with someone on a podcast a little while ago around, a farmer out west is not going to resonate so much in Australia with an ocean conservation program because it's not in his space, and that's okay. It's all right. Is that if we all get on board with one or two each, then eventually the scale will allow us to solve all 17.
Right.
Yeah. So swim in your own lane and be okay with it.
Good advice. Tell us a little bit about, so anyone who's building a product, a company, anything you're building, really, you could think of it as a product, whether it's a service or anything you're packaging value that solves a problem for someone specific. And as we go down that path, any entrepreneur who's done that knows that you really, to be successful, you have to be willing to evolve. Some people say pivot. I say pivoting is nonstop. So just let's call it evolve. So you have created your first core product with 17X as an event just before the pandemic. So how did you deal with the disruption of that? And what are you doing now? How are you evolving what you're...
Well, the disruption, how I dealt with the disruption was probably like anyone that was trying to do events, is I went like this. Are you serious? And then I quickly got a reality check and went, hang on a minute. There's a lot of people going through a lot of worse things than I am right now. So get over yourself. Yeah, look, the evolution has really happened quite organically. So when I started with 17X, remember the initial intention was that I just wanted to meet more people. So what I did is I set up this event, packaged it around the SDGs, which means it's not about me, and we can make it about a collective something that we can all kind of get behind. And I set it up and I went, okay, I need to be authentic in how I don't make this about me. So we will make it a ticketed event where people, they need to at least pay for a ticket so they show up, but it won't be expensive. We do a whole bunch of stuff through partnerships so that we can create values exchanges rather than, fee for service type stuff. So we can keep the cost down and make it accessible for small businesses to come along. It's not a $400 ticket. We want people in the room to join us on this journey. But then any profits that we made, I gave it all away to charity, aligned it with charities in local cities, did a heap of stuff with B1G1. And so the whole thing was, okay, all I want to do is meet people and find out more about these global goals, how we can use them and connect with interesting social entrepreneurs, innovators, change makers to learn from them, really. And there was never really an intention to create a business out of it, like as in a full-blown business. And the pandemic came along. I was teed up to do 12 events in 2020, with our first one was booked in Auckland for our first international event. And so I was very, I guess my tail was wagging high, and I was very much excited about just doing it again in that model. However, at the time, the conversation was around further innovation of partnerships. There's a lot of I had a lot of conversations around what's next. You get people in a room, you inspire them, they all jump on board, they want to make things happen, but what are you doing for the next conversation? What's your product? And so lots of that started to come up, and before I knew it, it kind of just evolved into a business all by itself. And one of the interesting parts, I think, as a startup in 2019 was I didn't try to control it, which is kind of a bit strange. Is I just took my hands off the wheel, and if certain partners in certain cities wanted to do things a certain way, my answer was, yeah, sweet, let's do it, let's make it work for everybody. And what that allowed it to do, I think, was just have its a very organic growth, for it to find its own direction that we can now build a business model around. And so now 17x is built into its own little brand, I guess, that has a self. You talk about self-determined learning, right? You know, this business has almost built its own direction on its own, and now I can push it in that direction, so to speak. So and getting back to your question, is what that's allowed it to do is evolve quite naturally into this very much partnership-driven, almost user-driven brand that is about connecting people. It's less about trying to sell a ticket or tell everyone that they have to cut their carbon or fly one particular flag. It's just, let's put people in a room that are aligned, give them some inspiration, and then allow them to work on these problems and solutions together. And then, you know, we are working on some what's next, and that's later. But so the pandemic came along and took all that away. But luckily, science is getting us ahead, and we can come back to the world with our events, and we are coming back in a very big way. So that's great.
I'm imagining the hybrid events will be a really big learning curve, and I'm very curious to show up without being in Australia. I'm very much looking forward to being there in November for the Brisbane event. What's the date of that one again?
November 10, everybody. Brisbane time, November 10 in Australia. The hybrid thing was an interesting one, Eli. So in 2020, I did have a lot of people saying, why don't you just switch this thing to a Zoom event, and away you go. And I struggled with that for quite a while, and ended up saying no, which I think was maybe braver than I thought it was, to say no to keeping the brand relevant, if that makes sense, during that time. And the reasoning around it was, obviously everything was turning into Zoom, and we now talk about Zoom fatigue, right? So it was becoming a very busy space. However, our speakers that we get on stage, so 2019 had 20 speakers. Yeah, and they're all homegrown heroes from each capital city that we go to. So we don't fly speakers in from other places, to the most point. And it's very much about showing the local communities what's happening in their own backyard. And our speakers are just so generous with their time and inspiring with their stories. And what they are able to contribute to in the room after the fact. So they are really the conduit to create the actual goal of the event, which is the networking. I hate the word networking. Let's call it connecting. The connecting that happens, you know, over a beer and a wine and a snack after the speakers. And that's where the gold really, really, you know, hit the ground. And so we couldn't do that with Zoom the way that it really needs to. And you talk about the business kind of evolving into its own space. So I needed to have bodies in a room to really connect with one another. And so the decision was no virtual events for 2020. And however, again, with evolution being what it is, and you need to evolve and be okay with changing the way your business is structured, in part at least, to what the market needs. And we are now very much virtually savvy, much more than perhaps what we used to be, the average Joe at least. So we can now bring 17x to a physical live audience, but the tech and the usability, I guess, and the familiarity with, Joe Blow in Western Sydney or out the back of your place in Cebu, they can jump online and be a part of it as well. So that's what we're doing. So we have, definitely jumped on board with a bit of tech, and fingers crossed the tech will survive us and we can deliver in November.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
want to key in a little bit on the decisions you've made, because you just said, you just went through several decisions that you've made along the way during the pandemic, etc. Where, all right, first, I've heard you say, and you just sort of touched on it again, that first year, despite being a data-driven decision maker, you decided not to overanalyze things and just kind of go
Yeah.
into city by city and let things happen. And it sounds to
Mm.
me like perhaps by doing that, you got a lot of ideas from your market because they told you what they wanted and you just went with it, maybe something like that.
Yep.
But like, how are you ensuring that? So I guess the question I'm asking around here is, when it comes to anybody building a product, the methodology of collecting constant feedback from your market and then figuring out what's your process of prioritizing that data to make sure, to make your decisions on what to build next, what to implement next, right? What um in your experiences through this business and any before, like, what are your philosophies when it comes to that process, like making sure you're getting good feedback from your market and who you're trying to serve, and then the prioritization of the next thing that you work on?
Yeah.
Any ideas? I know that's a very convoluted, complex
Yeah.
question.
No, I
But
get it. I think like we certainly did some feedback loop data. Looked at some principles out of. We've all read the lean startup for some of us. Looking at how do we take that feedback from the market, innovate as we go and grow and so on. Certainly, I have the benefit of having 20 odd speakers that we had in 2019 that can all give me direct feedback. I'm very open to it. We have our partners at a national and a local level that we have the opportunity to go. What my opening question is generally, how can 17x bring value to your brand? Because we know that if we can do that well, then our business model will survive, because it'll just come back, right? The second part of that is looking at, okay, so we are, like, at the moment, I'm having some amazing opportunities, conversations, whatever you want to call it, with some humans all over the world and brands all over the place, right? And one of the things that I'm using to help facilitate some of that is conversations with people that are smarter than me. So I'm using resources. I'm having conversations with people that have 20, 30, 40 years career-long experience in building values-aligned partnerships, and that understand how to scale really well in the right way without overdoing it or scaling too quick. I guess I've really been humbled at the openness that has come my way, particularly in the last, say, 6 months, with introductions to some amazing people from both ex-corporate levels, again, that have had careers spanning both large and small businesses scale, and really just talking it out with them and being okay with letting your guard down to a point and saying, right, these are the things that are coming my way. What do you reckon? And taking on that feedback. So I think for anyone, when we go through this whole startup life, whether you're on your own or it's yourself and a partner, is having human resources around you that you can connect with openly and authentically, and you're okay with them giving you some direct feedback if they tell you your idea is not that great, and just not taking it personally. And so for me, that's been one of the main things is as these opportunities come up, looking at, okay, who can I talk this over with, and that have the experience, and they almost become an advisory board. And those particular people that are out there right now, you know who you are, and I'm just supremely grateful for your time and look forward to many more conversations.
That is something that's meant a lot to me in the past number of years, but that I did not know how to do proactively before. So, despite the fact that you hate the word networking, you're obviously really good at building authentic relationships, connecting genuinely with people, and expanding your network of relationships. Are you asking specifically? Are you reaching out to your network and saying, "I'm looking for somebody with expertise in this," or you're just kind of getting those referrals out of
Yeah, Eli, it's a bit of both.
both?
So
Yeah,
at some stage, it could be over a coffee with somebody, and it's literally, hey, this is what's happening at the moment, and it just comes very naturally and organically. Other times, it's who do you know in this space that can answer this question?
nice.
And one of the interesting things, and it wouldn't surprise me, Eli, if you've experienced this yourself, working in this purpose-driven space, is that there seems to be a real lack of ego and in the, I guess, the social enterprise space or the purpose-driven, impact-driven business models. It's much more about how do we do this together.
Mhm.
One of my key learnings in 2019 was around, when an I becomes a we can do anything, and or anything's possible. And you find that when you start talking to people about things that are bigger than a P&L, or your own financial success, or making yourself, when you're very insular, if you're looking at how can we contribute to the world, or how can I create a tech platform that solves this problem, or how can I collaborate with other brands where we can all work together to do A, B, or C, the conversations are very natural and the doors tend to open a little bit easier. And the introductions flow a lot more, I guess, smoother, and the conversations that you have, and I think the network of experience that you get exposed to it's priceless. So it's quite
Love it.
humbling
Yeah, no, that
it's an interesting to come from my 20s. I guess I was very much like a traditional kind of worker, where it was like, all right, I got to make, how do I make 150 grand a year, or how do I make 100 grand a year, or I got to save up and buy a house, or do all that kind of stuff. And you're very much on your own path, right? Well, I was. Whereas these conversations and the network that does get created, or the community, I think I like better, is much more organic and self-fulfilling, because you're not actually focused on your own race.
yeah, I have definitely noticed that trend, and it's beautiful. I love working with people that are genuinely prioritizing the problem that they're solving, and not making the mistake I did for so long, which is to just focus on making money. Um, so just a little bit on that topic, actually, that you've mentioned this phrase "values aligned partnerships" a number of times, and this is something that I
Yep.
don't think I comprehended. First of all, I don't think I comprehended the importance of it, and second of all, I don't think I had any clue how you would go about doing it in the first place. So, um, what tips might you be able to give people on what you've learned in evaluating, finding or evaluating, or maybe even saying no, when what does that filtering process look like when you're trying to assess the potential or values aligned partnerships?
Um, yeah, I'd say you got to start with your own authenticity, as in, is this actually what I'm set out to do? So
Mm,
I've been playing around under the advice of one of these very smart people that are giving me some, I guess, some coaching is one way to put it at the moment around this. Is how do we actually define 17x purpose? What is it actually here to do now that it's evolved a little bit? And setting out and breaking that down and saying, even to myself, is this aligned with what I actually want to be doing? And if the answer is yes, then great. We've got an authentic alignment between business and personal, and then being really honest and open about that. So it's you can't find, if you're a black swan, you can't find another black swan if you're pretending to be white. Like if you're trying, if it's just about being authentic and talking in that space. One of the key pieces of advice I did get a little while ago, which I mentioned earlier, was you don't have to try and solve every problem, and you don't have to try and do it all on your own. So once you start kind of opening up and saying, okay, these are the things that I'm trying to do, generally you'll start to gravitate towards other brands, other operators, other leaders that are speaking the same language, and eventually you end up in a room together. Patience, I believe, is something that's really important. Being okay just to slow things down and be patient for the right thing, the right partnership, conversation, network, opportunity to present itself. Not trying to rush this stuff, because when you rush, you either miss things or you become inauthentic and you're trying to push an outcome. So I think that patience is something that's really important, and being okay, to say not so much no. Certainly no if there's a complete misalignment. It's like, no, mate, this isn't going to work. We're completely different. But looking and going, okay, one of these it's really fun for me at the moment, where I've had the pleasure of meeting all these great people, these great brands, and I'll hear from someone that say, I'm trying to do this and this and that, and I'll have you need to talk to this person over here, and I get to play a bit of matchmaking with these brands. So just having these open conversations, and rather than me trying to say, okay, 17x can help you do A, B, and C, because we can certainly help you do that, is, well, rather than me trying to fit everybody's, square peg in a round hole type thing, is accepting that 17x maybe can't do that as well as this person over here. You guys need to meet, and now you go and do it, and then tell me how it went. So being okay to not have to be everybody's solution, I think is good.
I agree.
Authentic. Just say it how it is, and it's okay if you don't align. There's nothing wrong with that.
That is a lesson that's taken me a long time to learn. I used to try to make everything work and didn't want to lose opportunities, and it always bites you when you ignore your gut.
Saying yes to everything. I tried it for a while. It was great fun, and then all of a sudden I had, I've got a nice big whiteboard right next to me here, and all of a sudden it was full. And I went, hang on a minute, I can do all of these things at 50%, or I can do 4 of them at 100%. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it pays to say yes to a lot of things early in life, so you get a lot of experiences. But once you start to figure out your passion and your niche, like, you've got to start kind of narrowing down. Hey, Mick, could we pause just for a second and see? Your network connection seems to be choppy now. Earlier it was good. I don't know. I think it's you. I don't know, because I don't know. Do I seem choppy to you?
No, you seem fine. We do have a storm rolling through here at the moment.
Maybe that's what's going on. All right. If there's nothing on your end that you can adjust, then we'll just push through. I think you're understandable. It's just a couple times it's a little bit choppy.
Give me a sec.
Okay, cool.
See how that works.
Thank you. By the way, if anybody out there, LinkedIn or Facebook, is listening and you have any questions or thoughts or anything, I can see your comments, and I could adjust the things I'm asking Mick if you wanted to push something to me. I should say that in the beginning.
No.
All right.
Great.
Cool. All right. So jumping back in, I just heard from somebody that you're actually smooth for them. So maybe it's just me.
Awesome.
So we'll keep going. Let's shift. So a lot of the questions that I've been asking you so far have been related to developing a product. Let's shift a little bit to culture, people, and teams general arena, because I know you're somebody who, in your consulting, a little bit curious, like, I know your backstory, you worked in a pizza company when you were young, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, so how did you end up being a consultant on culture and in the people arena? And then so first let's start with that.
So I fell into coaching, but look, my first job was delivering pizzas at Domino's in Lismore when I left school as a uni student. My first main job, anyway. I did some other little things as a kid, but in that environment, I had I guess I was lucky to work for a franchisee. So it was not a company-led store. It was a franchisee who was only a few years older than me. He was in his mid to early 20s, I think, when he started. And shout outs to John. Love you, mate. Still good mates to this day, and he's still one of my mentors in a lot of ways. His business acumen and and business brain was just, and always has been, absolutely phenomenal. And I learned so much from him over about a 7-year period. Learned a lot about how to be a leader and how to, we were looking after, at one stage I had about 200 young kids underneath me in 5 different shops, where I ended up being his kind of right-hand man as a 22-year-old or whatever. But I learned a lot about leadership at an early age, and how to motivate and engage teenagers to actually turn up and do a good job.
Nice.
And then I went off and did a whole bunch of other jobs and whatnot. But when I fell into coaching, I very quickly aligned myself with so I guess where I niched in the coaching space was working with the small business owner, let's say 100 staff down to single operator, where they've started out as a technician. They're highly involved technically in their business. They've had some success. They've employed some people, but they're still technically involved and they're not leading their people properly. And it's kind of like, oh, I've got all these people now. What do I do? And I very quickly ended up in that kind of space and helping these people develop teams that they can rely on, and develop a business and a system and model where they can actually maybe get out of the way a little bit and let the team do its thing in the business and have a bit of a life as well, and achieve what they're set out to do. And over the evolution of that role is, I just spent more and more time around teams and building culture and understanding how to turn up for our teams. I'm a big believer in service-based leadership, and how we can, our job as leaders is to turn up for our team, to engage, inspire, educate, give them what they need, enable them to go and be successful. And if they're successful, then hey, what happens to the business, right? And then, of course, in 2015, the SDGs come along. So then it becomes, how do we use purpose to align our teams in something that's a little bit bigger than just their KPIs? And lo and behold, if you can align your team with a shared purpose, their performance goes through the roof. And away you go. Yeah. So that's kind of where I love the idea of talking around, using purpose and impact to develop teams. I think it's a huge opportunity for business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, one of the biggest reasons why people end up disillusioned with their work is because they can't see the direct connection between what they do every day and something they care about. Right. Yeah. Love it. I know along my entrepreneurial journey and the different companies, products, teams that I've built, I know I've made a lot of mistakes in organizing those companies and the culture, the people we hired, probably the way I led them. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. Let's just leave it at that. So I have a question. Because, again, we're trying to help people that are creating products and companies that we want to see them succeed in making impact. So what early stage mistakes do you see entrepreneurs making when it comes to building culture? And what recommendations could you give them to kind of help avoid those? If you can avoid them early on, as much as possible, right?
Yeah. So recruiting on talent alone is not right. Okay. So you can't recruit on skill set and expect to have a values aligned team member. You can train skills, you can't train attitude to a point, right? And natural affinity to. We were just talking about values aligned brands, right? How do you find a values aligned brand to work with? Values aligned team players are no different. We need to look at our recruitment or attraction process. How are we attracting people that believe the same stuff that we do? If you don't know how to do it, just go and look at Patagonia and how they recruit people or attract people. Sweet as. I think, Eli, you mentioned the other day, right? I saw a post of yours around recruiting, and I think step one was find people that are aligned with your own core values. And even going before that is, do you have core values or your own culture defined already? And if you don't, then you need to start with that. It's got to go from top down. If the directors, owners, C-suite, whoever are not involved, then it's a waste of time. Top down culture development, but then bottom up creation. So get the owners, directors, C-suite leaders on board with, yes, this is where we need to go. Use your team to help create it and give it to them, because if they create it, they'll own it. What is important to you guys? Is it climate change? Is it equality? Is it something around justice? Is it what are the things that are important to you and us as a brand? And of course, leadership are in that combo, but just do it all together. Come out the other end with some core values that everyone can live, breathe, and love. And then attract people that believe the same thing. You can train them. You can train them on the tech, and you can train them on the technical aspects of their role. Certainly, there are some roles where we need to have technical efficiencies. I can't go and apply for a coding role with your business because I don't know how to code. However, I'm sure there's millions of coders out there, and there'll be a couple that really align with your core values. I can't go and apply to be a brain surgeon, but I'm sure we can find the right brain surgeon, right? So clearly define core values, and then attracting the right people from the get-go is key.
Yeah. This is the first company that I've ever built where we started with core values right in the beginning. And one of them is taking ownership of your own growth. Another one is reliability. We just have 4 right now: self-awareness and camaraderie. Starting a company where we hired from the very beginning very carefully around those values, and we've also measured people and let people go around the same values, has led to the most amazing culture I've ever been in. Of course, I've not been in a lot of companies that I didn't build, but it's the first time I feel like we've done it right. And now that's led to a challenge where, I guess not really a challenge, but more clarity around who we need to work with, because we build meshed teams with our partners. And if our partners don't prioritize values over tech skills, then it kind of doesn't end up aligning that well. So I super agree with what you just said. You're teaching me something right now, though, because I do very much believe that values and culture they always come from the top, whether the top knows it or not. And even if they just have neglected creating a values built culture, that's creating the culture in and of itself by neglect. But I haven't really thought that much about. Well, I believe in the principle of letting the people on the team own it, right? That's the goal. What tips could you give me when it comes to being better at bottom-up creation? How do I really get people seeing that they can be the ones to create that? Any ideas?
Open. Just be open. Be ready for it. Be okay with maybe a few suggestions that you might not agree with, but you can see that maybe with a bit of coaching and a bit of manipulation, we can all get on the same page. But really, it's just about giving people the platform to do it. Pre-framing, okay, guys, it could be something as simple as next Wednesday, we're all going to this venue and we're going to sit in a box and we're going to listen to some music, eat some good food, and we've got a whole bunch of whiteboards and we're going to figure out our 6 new core values, and I want you guys to do it. And you become the moderator rather than the influencer, and just let it happen and see where it goes. That's one thing is just letting, again, just kind of don't try to control it. Just see what happens. You don't have to implement what comes out. Just do the exercise and see what happens. There's a good book I read recently that I've been quoting a lot, which is Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, wrote No Rules Rules. And it's quite an interesting book, and I've taken quite a few little tidbits from it. One of the great ones, because it does kind of lead back into this attraction and having the right people, is he talks about talent density and context as a way to have great teams. So talent density being obviously having people that are highly talented in the right roles, and one person that's supremely talented can perhaps outperform 3 people that are not. So looking at how can you have a really dense talent pool in your team, and then giving them the context that can sit behind them. So giving them context as to what the business is here to do, why it exists, and where it needs to go in the next short or long term, and then getting out of their way, because you've got the right person with the right talent, with the right context. So with the right talent, the right context, you've hired them because they're good at what they do. So now hop out of the way. And culture definition is kind of shouldn't be too much different to that. If you've recruited people in that are values aligned, they're in the space and hop out of the way and let them come up with it. There was a great lesson that we took from one of our speakers, Glenn Carlson from Dent. I know you're familiar with Dent. He spoke at our Melbourne event, and he talked about how he got the 17 goals integrated with his team. And one of the ways was he just gave them the platform. Here's global goals. Here's 17 goals. I want them integrated into the business. Go and do it, and then walked away. And they did it. So it's that, I guess, trust in a lot of ways. Here you go. Find some of the stuff in here, but I want these things integrated into our business, and I want you guys to own it. Go and make it happen. And as a case study, what else do you need? Go and make it happen. So
I think trust. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. Just the ownership that comes from having your team involved. So I think if going back to what you're saying is yes, we know that the owners and C-suite leaders need to understand where we're headed. So maybe they're macro, and then you just get your team to come up with the micro. I do it all the time with clients, and the teams live and breathe their core values every day.
Yeah, I think we are doing that to some degree, but I want to keep getting better at it. And I think trust is key, and not.
Oh yeah.
It's very easy to start going after perfection and then making people tentative and hesitant in bringing up ideas.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because businesses evolve, right? In the same way that our products evolve, our cultures evolve, everything changes. Just because you set up, you can do it every year. It doesn't. There's no handbook that says that if you set your core values or your culture, that's it for the next 20 years. Like, change, adapt, evolve, make a change.
We changed one of ours this year. Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, we're running down to just the last few minutes, I think, depending on how much time you have. But I want to ask a little bit of a question just around purpose and what challenges have you either run into, or do you see other people running into when it comes to either realizing the purpose you're setting out to have, or to the impact that you want to have, and or staying true to it, right? So you set out, you want to solve a problem. With you, it's seeing, right? If I hope I'm articulating this correctly in your words or close enough to them, that more small businesses and also maybe bigger businesses are now realizing more impact in alignment with the SDGs. So if that's your impact or something connected to that, what challenges have you run into in realizing that or staying really true to it?
I think one of the challenges I'm going through right now, just to be authentic, is trying not to be everything to everyone, and how do we make sure that we can deliver as a business model, 17x, to connect and educate, engage, enable the business community with the SDGs, and make sure that we do that off the back of these amazing, generous conversations I'm getting to have. Is okay, how do we make sure that we deliver on what we set out to do first, and then so perhaps getting back to maybe being patient and staggering our evolution or how we maybe mix things up or change over time. An example is looking at some opportunities internationally with 17x. Maybe now's not the right time thanks to what's going on in the world, but can we just stagger that back and do it in 23, right? In the early stages, I think some challenges that I had was certainly trying to do things my own way versus what the market said. I had a lot of people telling me, don't do events, you waste, they're shitty, you're going to lose money. Events are just stressful and you won't enjoy it. So I guess trying to learn from experience, people that are gone down the journey before, but learn from it in a way that it doesn't derail you too far, and staying real, but in understanding the realities of what you're getting into, but also backing yourself to, okay, well, if you're doing things a little bit different, like you think of tech, right? You guys, there's so much consistent innovation in the tech game, and there's a lot of failed tech out there that suggests why you shouldn't maybe come up with your piece of tech. However, if you've got that opportunity to learn from that failed piece and your own little evolution or innovation that twists it, and the structure, the confidence, the experience, and the opportunity to make it happen, then happy days.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It does. Maybe if we could squeeze in one more, I wanted to ask you a little bit. I said earlier in the conversation I wanted to come back to this, and I think this is such an important. I think it's very important that anybody out there who wants to be who wants to contribute to the change they want to see, right?
Yeah.
That we need to stay focused on positive, on evidence of progress or things that keep us inspired. We need to see that. We need to see trends that we like that make us say, okay, things they are getting better. We start to believe that if we look at the data. So, like, what are you seeing? You alluded to it a little bit earlier with young people are not going to let us get away with going the way we've gone, right? So, like, what are you seeing out there trend wise that does make you makes you optimistic and excited?
I've noticed here in Australia, particularly in Brisbane, has a really vibrant circular economy space, which is great. And I've learnt more and more about circular economy and upcycling, recycling, reusing, and all of that. I think as a widget based, so product based business, there are huge opportunities to innovate solutions that will go across multiple supply chains. So there are some clever people out there coming up with ways to circumvent, plastic production or e-waste, in certain product development. And they're not only solving their own problem, they're solving a problem that can go across 1,000 different product supply chains. So I think the scale and the multiplier effect of some of these little innovations that come out that may seem small at the time have the ability to transform a complete solution across an entire industry. We're certainly at a space now, like we said, that the millennials just won't let us get away with it. So we have to look at ways to change the way that we're doing things, particularly product-based businesses. Obviously, impact investing is starting to become a bigger thing, which is great. A lot of us just saw the money that was dropped into Canva was huge. A lot of money just dropped into Who Gives a Crap again, which was huge. The toilet roll company that are doing amazing stuff. So the funding opportunities are starting to present themselves in bigger ways in this space to give us little guys a little bit of help to scale and do what we do, which is huge. I think we're seeing that big corporations are coming up with social innovation grants, and almost war chests for this whole space to take action. And I think it's less of a halo greenwashing or impact washing thing, that they're actually genuinely wanting to get on board and make this stuff happen. It's not just ticking a box in a lot of ways. I just was sent something yesterday that Westpac are doing some amazing stuff with a youth innovation challenge around tech. So the big boys have finally cottoning on. I think we've still got a bit of a ways to go. However, we're seeing that shift in some of this. You only have to go back to the BlackRock CEO talking a little while ago around, I can't remember his name, around impact investing. So yeah, it's. I think the cauldron is bubbling, and we're particularly here in Australia, we're starting to see some change, but hopefully in the next couple of years it'll really start to come out.
I'm excited as well. I see a lot of the same trends, and I love it. All right, to wrap up, so November 10 is the first 17X in a while, right?
We're back,
and
we are back.
Hybrid, as far as I know.
Hybrid event, yeah. Yep. So if you're in Brisbane, you can come and see us. Come and get in the room with us and socially distance high five me, and be with us at QUT. We've got amazing partnership with QUT. Chartered Accountants of Australia are helping us bring 17X back as well as one of our huge brand partners, which I'm so grateful for. And yeah, you can join online. Eli, I believe I saw your name in the online ticket crew.
Absolutely.
We will be hybrid streaming all around the world, so we'll be ready for you. No matter where you are, you can join the conversation. And I am almost giddy with excitement that we're actually getting back on stage.
Well, I'm excited to attend to my first one, and I appreciate everything you're doing, Mick. Thanks for
It's going
this
to be so
conversation.
great. Our speaker lineup is it's ridiculous. There's so much talent and inspiration and a great mix. And I feel like once we're all on stage, there'll be a lot of smiles and a lot of really great value exchange happening. So the first of many more to come. I'm really, really stoked.
All right. Definitely also recommend Mick's 17x podcast. I think you'll enjoy it. And with that, thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to next time we talk.
Awesome. Thanks, Eli, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you too.